All right, it's 5:02. Let's call the September 9th, 2024 meeting of the Leitchfield Planning Commission to order. April, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Whitmore. Commissioner Mudd. Chairman Buckles.
Present.
Commissioner Clemens. Here. Vice Chair Bocock. Here. Commissioner Hack.
Here.
Thank you, April. Please reflect staff present and our legal counsel, Mr. Dave Vickery. On the back of your agenda, you have the meeting minutes from the August 12, 2024 meeting. I'll give you an opportunity to skim those if you have not already had a chance, and we'll entertain a motion to amend or adopt.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt.
I have a motion to accept the minutes from Tim Bocock. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by George Hack. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, visitors that are wanting to speak on something unrelated to our scheduled public hearing. Anybody need anything? All right, next on the agenda would be RZ 24-133, which has been withdrawn. So we will not be having a public hearing on RZ 24-133. We will circle back to that in just a few moments. No deliberations, no motions. Old and unfinished business. Dave, where would you like to start? Or Tyler, where would you like to start on old and unfinished business?
Last meeting, we talked about the medicinal marijuana, and we did approach the council in the one of the workshop meetings of the last the council meeting directly after our last planning meeting. We talked about the different things about how we wanted to, if we wanted to add any other restrictions as far as protecting other entities other than schools and nurse daycares. The consensus of that was to just go with what the KRS set forth. There was a couple that would like to have seen something in there, but for the most part, it was decided that it's medical, and if it becomes recreational in the future, then maybe look at imposing some stricter restrictions upon that. So basically just going with what the KRS sets forth, and then as far as the zones, it's going to be left up to us as the Planning Commission on where we think they should go.
That was basically the consensus that I was getting as well. I know, Dave, you had a conversation with the mayor, and he conveyed similar information. I guess what we can take heart in is that we were willing to ask the questions, figure out whether it was something worth considering, so we can't be criticized for making sure before we set sail that that didn't need to be addressed. Mm-hmm. But I think I sort of got the impression at the conclusion of our last discussion that that's sort of where we had arrived anyway, was let the state be the state.
Consider those as
Cultivator, processor, producer,
Okay.
industrial, ag.
So the next matter will be, Tyler, do you have a recommendation on which zone use you think that this should fall into?
So as far as a dispensary, we discussed the last meeting, putting those in the C1 zone. Basically, that's pretty much any main street through the city. If we got cultivators, processors, and producers, looking at light industrial and agricultural. And then we talked about the safety compliance facilities. I put in there industrial and public, but then we had the discussion, we don't have a lot of public areas already, so we could probably strike that. And then we could add those in the C1 because we feel like it's probably not going to be a very large facility just for testing. So we could go ahead with the safety compliance facility and light industrial and highway commercial as well.
Okay. Anyone have any concerns or thoughts on the staff recommendation?
I like it.
Okay. Do I have someone interested in making a motion that we adopt that language into the zoning ordinance and have our legal counsel come up with a draft for us?
I'll make that motion that we just reference the KRS as our guideline.
Okay. As well as the zoning recommendation from Tyler?
Sorry for not clarifying.
Okay. Heather, you got that? Okay. Tim, with that motion, do I have a second? Kendall with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Tyler, other old or unfinished business?
So we did also discuss the signs for these types of businesses and mirroring what Henderson put in. Is that what you all would like for us to do there as well?
Yep. Do you like it enough to make a motion? Kendall makes the motion. Do we have a second? George with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next, Tyler?
As far as old or unfinished?
Is there any other old or unfinished? I think
No other old
the
unfinished.
comp plan is still underway, and probably, I know with travel schedules, fare schedules, and just holiday schedules, it's been hard to get that finalized, but I know we'll see that probably in the next month or so. We're not at risk of any deadline so long as the comp plan is underway of the review and the update, so we're fine on that. I'll sort of preamble any new business if there's no other old or unfinished business. Okay. One of the reasons that the application was withdrawn for tonight's meeting might be for similar reasons that you might have had on your own when you received your packets, because, you know, that purpose is you review your packets, you come here, we discuss the virtues of the application based upon the evidence that we receive. When I received my packet, had an immediate concern about the exclusive use zone. And it sort of was coming to fruition, my fears over exclusive use from the very beginning. I would have never really considered that we would look at that in a residential type use because of its specificity. So I had a conversation with Dave, and we were kind of in an agreement that it was likely unfair to the applicant that our ordinance had the shortcoming that didn't pave the way toward a condominium use. And we advocated for, if we were given the opportunity to fix the language and embrace the condominium usage, that it would be in the best interest of the applicant and future applicants when it comes to utilizing condominiums in the city of Leitchfield. So a little bit of background, it's a bit of a misnomer. If you go to Quail Run, many people will say those are condominiums. They are not condominiums, they are townhouses. For as long as I've been on the commission, I would have thought condominiums were permitted uses in some zone, but we have no definition of condominium, and we have it not listed as a permitted use in any of our zones. So we need to attempt to resolve that, because apparently the market is demanding that condominiums be considered, and I think we'll see more of this. So that's what brings us to tonight and the application being withdrawn. And I think I made a pledge in the future that if, and Dave, you might have shared this with Tyler, but if this application comes back again, we're going to waive the fee that might have been already involved with that application, because that's only the fair thing to do, because it's our problem that we haven't already allowed for condominiums. Dave, what do you have to add?
The Kentucky Condominium Act was passed, I think it went into effect in 2011, if my memory serves me right. And before that, it was a Horizontal Property Act, but that's where the older parts. It's a pretty complicated act.
They can't hear you.
What's that?
They can't hear you.
They can't hear me. Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't want them to hear me. The Kentucky Condominium Act is something that Kentucky passed, and it's fairly complex. You have to have common areas, you have to have rules, you have to have regulations, you have to have a master deed, you have to have blueprints and plans and setting forth who's going to do what and who's going to take care of what, who's going to maintain what, and how it's supposed to be maintained. So it's all set forth, and I think it's as you well know, there's been a lot of condominiums established throughout the state of Kentucky, and they've been very successful, very nice, really nice, in fact, nice areas. People like them because they just don't want the maintenance. And they want to, the older people particularly don't want the maintenance, and they really fit in well to their lifestyle. So, I mean, it's really something that, when we looked at it, Mark and I were just amazed. We couldn't find anywhere where condominiums were ever mentioned in our ordinance, and so we want to define that, which will be easy enough to do. The question then becomes, what areas are we going to allow the condominiums in? My thinking, this is just my thinking now, that you would certainly allow them in multifamily, that would be R5. You would allow them in R4. You would allow them in the high-density R2 with a conditional use. Now, what I mean there, reason you need a conditional use is because they need to look at the neighborhood. They need to look at the whole idea behind it, whether or not it's going to affect the neighborhood, whether or not it's going to affect the plan. So that's a conditional use, and that's the reason I would suggest that. You could even put it in the single-family R2 with being a permitted conditional use. But it's, I think they would need to look at it very hard and make sure it didn't affect the surrounding properties.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a kind of a recommendation, and we can draft something to that effect. Are any suggestions that you have?
So basically where we are, and to sort of summarize, is that if we will define and permit in our existing zones, where the biggest protection is in that condominium act that the state regulates. So the nuts and bolts and the actual mechanisms on how that works is regulated by the Commonwealth, which means we don't have to put forth a lot of effort in oversight. We do, as Davis is recommending, in a couple of zones, it would be a permitted conditional use, which means we do have some say on whether it's appropriate for that particular zone. But in our high-density zones, R4 or R5, it would just be a normal permitted use. So, and for maybe someone who might be watching the meeting or someone who's a layperson that doesn't know, the basic way to understand the difference is a condominium is from the walls in, a townhouse is from the walls out. So if you have any type of yard, landscaping, anything like that, that's more likely to be a townhouse with a shared wall. But a condominium has a homeowners association, which is responsible for roofing, common areas, et cetera, and then you just own basically from the walls in, is one of the primary ways to know the difference. So based upon Dave's recommendation so far, or what you've heard, are there thoughts that anyone's ready to share?
Well, the thing that I saw when we first got this packet, as you said, that it didn't need to be in exclusive use, but then I started looking, where could it be? And R5 has permitted uses of multiple family dwellings, which is basically what a condominium is. But if we add it to that zone or other zones, then is it going to be defined, a condominium as defined by KRS? That's how it needs to be worded. Is that not correct?
My idea was to define it in the definitions as in the Kentucky Revised Statutes.
Yeah, so anybody that's looking at condominium,
Right.
then it's going to be
They have to
clearly
comply with
defined that they have to do that.
Right, and we put
Instead
in
of
there.
just call anything a
Right, and we
condo.
have to put in there that it has to comply
Yeah.
with the Kentucky Condemnation Act. No, Condominium Act, not condemnation, condemnation. We're not condemning it.
And so if KRS gets updated, then we automatically get updated too because of the circular reference to the statute. Any other thoughts so far?
R4 is two-family. Would that not, condominium be exceeding that?
It would not be practical, but I suppose it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's practical or not. We could put with permitted conditional use, and that way they could look at each site and see whether or not it was practical or not. That's something that I think is really good, because you can look at that and look at the area and look at the lot and look at the traffic and look at the various aspects of it and say, well, yes, this does the lot such that really it really is good in this area. It'll work well.
What I've seen in other areas, and I think even here, condominiums are typically a higher level of structure and building and than maybe a lot of the other multifamily.
That's what I've seen too.
They seem to attract well, I don't know what you'd call it, they're more expensive typically, and it's a more, somewhat.
Well, and because of the ongoing fees associated, because of the common maintenance that has to be performed, they're outsourcing that to some other entity to make sure that whether it's landscaping or parking and sealing and striping and roofing and HVAC and all those things are taken care of. So there is definitely a greater back-end investment to a condominium than other types of similar multifamily structures that might look like condos but don't actually function that way. So what I'm hearing is R5 permitted, R4 conditional, but what were you perhaps advocating for in addition to that, Dave? Any others?
Well, I looked at R2 single-family high density, and it might have a lot that with conditional use might be appropriate in that area. I didn't know whether you would or not.
I guess without seeing the definition of the condominium from KRS, it would be, I'm having a hard time imagining that in my mind, a single-family high-density condo, but I suppose that's possible if you have individual structures that you only own from the walls in, and some other entity is responsible for the maintenance. If you had a high-density neighborhood that, I don't know if it could function like a condominium.
We can insure condos in two different ways, from the walls in, like you mentioned, or we can actually insure the rooftop and the exterior, and actually provide a little bit of liability for the exterior. So we can do that in two different ways.
Okay.
I don't know if that's relevant at all, other than the fact that
What'd you find, Kendall?
The 2A single family actually composed of high-density, single-family, detached and attached site homes. So basically, you could say this, a condominium is an
It's an
attached family
attached.
home. Could you not?
Yes.
So that R2A might be, in my opinion, probably as a conditional use.
Well, that's what I thought too, because you need to look at the neighborhood, you need to look at the lot,
I think they fit together to some extent.
and see whether it would fit, because we have areas that I think it would fit, but we have areas that I think it would not fit too.
All right, before we move forward, did you have a question, Sheila?
I just have a comment. If you're talking about condominiums, it's covered under your definitions of multifamily structures. It gives for the purpose of this regulation, a multifamily structure means that any building which is designed, built, rented, leased, let, or hired out to be occupied, or which is occupied as the home or residence of more than two families living independently of each other with cooking facilities for each family. This definition does include apartment houses, townhouses, condominium structures. So, in my opinion, if it's gonna be multifamily, it needs to stay in a multifamily zone instead of an R2 single family, because then you're kind of stepping over that line just a little bit. And my concern, one of my concerns with this requested zone change that was withdrawn was the EX zone, because it had nothing in there about setbacks, rules, regulations, as far as parking and drainage. It has nothing in that EX zone, like the other zones have. The other zones have the requirements for setbacks and size of lots and how many structures can be on a lot and that sort of thing. So I'm glad that that was withdrawn, and if it's gonna be reconsidered, then that's fine with me. As far as, I'm glad that the EX zone was taken out, because it was too wide open for, I'm not sure what, I think I know what they were gonna do. I didn't until I got here tonight, but I think your condominium question falls under your definitions. zones for R5 or R2, because I don't know if you can have a condo with just 2 units in it or not, I don't know.
I practically wouldn't, like I say, I can't imagine that, but I don't want to make the presumption in the same way. I don't want to just assume that, you can't have a series of single-family structures that don't fall underneath a condominium blanket. Like, I've never seen it, I can't imagine it, but it doesn't mean I'm an expert on condominium structure either, so. Do you feel like, with that information, do you feel like we've solved this riddle already? You think we need to go
No,
more
I
specific?
think we need to be more specific. I think we need to specifically state that a condominium as defined in the Kentucky Condominium Act, and they'll be subject to all rules and regulations under this act. And the reason is because it has specific with regard to maintenance and homeowner, it has a lot of specifics in it that protect the community and the residents.
So then, you're advocating that if we will provide a reference to the definition, then we've put the responsibility of what it is and what it isn't on someone else that regulates that type of thing. And then if we specifically list the placement, then we have the ability to control where they go.
That's right.
Thoughts?
Sounds very wise.
So with the recommendation of the R2A, the R4, and the R5, is there a consensus to keep the 3 of those? Do you want 2 of those? Do you want more of those?
I still have some more concerns on the R4 than I do the R2A,
Okay.
based on what I think. Because it's clearly defined as single family and 2-family
Yeah.
construction.
I have a hard time wondering why one would bother with a 2.
Yes. Just because the
But then going back to, without being an expert on the subject, someone may come along and say, well, here's why it's practical to do that. But until then, I suppose that we,
The only thing I could think of is, some of our R2A developments right now are still just single-family detached structures. But if somebody puts in an attached structure, patio home, they share a roof, they share the exterior of the home, so who's responsible? If I buy this side and the roof needs replaced, do I replace my half and the other half, So it could be potential where somebody does put in patio homes with an HOA to where that's taken care of. That way everything looks identical on the exterior.
Dave, do you think that you could meet the legal description of a condominium and have 2 units?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
So then there's no sense in having it in
I
R4?
really don't think you can.
Okay. All right, what about the virtues of R2A?
I'd have to look at it closely again, but I don't think so. Probably need to look at it, I can look at it a little bit more closely if you want me to, and explore that a little bit more and shoot out something to you, but I would hesitate to do that. I think the 2-family were more leaning towards duplexes, and, which I don't like because we have maintenance problems with regard to duplexes. And the people never think about it. It'd be so much better if they had a condominium, I agree.
Well, one of the things I talked about, I think last month, was making sure that we have an ordinance that makes it as easy as possible to enforce for staff. So, because we don't specifically have the language, or the language doesn't stand out about condominiums, the most important part is get a definition in the definitions and get it as a listed permitted use in R5, and then we have a roadmap of a way of accommodating the request, whether that requires a zone change or whether it doesn't require a zone change. It at least gets us in a position to where we can facilitate the request. Are we satisfied with that part, and we can address the R2A some other time?
I'm satisfied with that.
Tyler, what do you think?
I'm good with it.
The best way to go?
We want to make sure we do it right.
Do you feel the limitations of it not being included in R2A?
Well, that's just what I'm saying, you know, so the two-family zone is duplex, one owner for the entire structure. Okay? In R2A, if you have a patio home, the potential is two separate owners for one structure. So that's where I was reverting to a while ago. If you own the right side and someone else owns the left side, they don't want to replace the roof, but you do. Or if it's vinyl siding and it's damaged and you just replace your one side, then the other side's still the condition that it was prior to. And then you've got overlap of shingles and so forth. So I'm just saying the potential is there for somebody that does build a set of patio homes to put restrictions on there and say, hey, these areas are common. You're going to pay X amount of dollars per month into an account that will take care of this, you know, such as an HOA or something like that.
Well, see, a
You
condominium.
know, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the potential's there.
A condominium is defined as real estate, portions of which are designated for separate ownership, and the remainder of which is designated for common ownership solely by the owners of those portions. I guess you could have two. Real estate is not a condominium unless the undivided interest in the common elements are vested in the unit owners.
But based off that, we can't put it in multifamily.
Yeah, we can.
For apartment complex?
Yeah, we just have to, we have to change we're gonna change the definition of it.
Okay,
Yeah, we're gonna change, we have to change the section,
okay.
but we could.
Okay.
Can we put in our language that a condominium has to be like 3 constructions, as 3 or more, or something like that? Can we do that?
No, I think because we're going to refer to the KRS on deciding what it is and what it isn't, we just kind of have to decide if it passes the definition with the state, then we've decided where it can go.
I'm just wondering whether or not in a practical manner, if you just have 2 units, that's practical, you know, looks like it'd be very difficult for me.
It
but-
doesn't seem practical to me either, but people are doing some different and innovative things, which makes me wonder. So there's probably no harm. Tyler, are you asking for permitted conditional use in R2A?
Permitted, yeah,
Permitted or conditional?
conditional.
Yeah, it'd be conditional.
Conditional?
They would have to apply for the conditional use to make it a condominium.
Explain.
Yeah,
Conditional use in R2A, permitted in
It's
R5?
better there by far, because it's you know, the description of that is a single family, detached or attached. So a condominium is an attached building, whether it's 2, 5, 10, whatever. So I think the definition of R2A already accommodates it.
Okay. So Kendra, are you making the motion for, are you advocating for permitted in R2A? Are you making the motion for defining it?
I think we have a comment.
May I make a comment before you make a motion?
Well, I'm not making a motion, but yes, you can make a comment.
Someone makes a motion. On the R2A, single-family high density, if you go up to that paragraph above the permitted primary uses, it states in there, more than one permitted principal structure per lot or parcel of land shall not be permitted. So if you're gonna do, I wouldn't think they would be detached, kind of like going back to Quail Run, how those were set up, that they're set up in, what, 4s, I think?
Generally, they're,
You could take an acre lot and put 6 of those units on there, because that, in that R2A, it should be just one, no more than one permitted principal structure per lot or parcel of land shall not be permitted.
Where is that?
it's right here,
The very last one.
3841,
Permitted primary uses.
3 dot,
Last sentence.
3.8.4.1, right there. More than one permitted principal structure per lot or parcel of land shall not be permitted.
as principal structure, one condo building.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you had 6 condos in one building, that's not 6.
That's
structures.
one principal structure, right?
That's one structure.
One principal structure, whether it's 4, 8,
Right.
12, depends on, and no matter how you stack them, just one structure.
Depends on lot size, though.
A lot of it's gonna depend on lot size, yeah, that's what I was talking about before. It's
You
gonna-
still have a
that's the reason-
percentage.
That's the reason we really
35%.
need to make it a conditional use.
But theoretically, something like Parkland Manor could be constructed, and it could be a condo, condominium building.
Possibly.
Hmm?
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you go to Panama City or any resort town in the world, that's, how condos are. They're usually stacked in high-rise or that type of thing, so, but that's still just one principal structure per lot. Okay. So, do you have a motion you want to make?
I'll make a motion that it be permitted as a conditional use in R2A
Conditional in R2A and permitted in R5?
and permitted in R5.
Is part of your motion to define it in our definitions as described by KRS? That's a good motion, Kendall. Good job.
Right there now.
Is there a second? George with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Dave, do your best.
I will, try.
Is there any other new business?
Yes, we're good, we need to, just, if you don't mind giving your permission on the record, we have to file suit against the lady who has violated the zoning ordinance. She has erected a modular home, and she also has another home on the premises that she has not demolished. It's on Cady Mill Road, so some of you are familiar with that already, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're gonna have to file suit against her because she has not demolished the home like she promised Tyler she would do. So I'm gonna have to file
Is
suit.
it still being occupied?
Beg pardon?
Is both buildings being occupied?
No,
No.
she's
Okay.
occupying the new building, which is the one she'll have to remove. Or tear the other one down.
That's the one that's got the manufactured home on it.
Yes.
I think we dealt with that sometime last year.
We did.
Yep. So everybody's up to speed on that?
We don't need to actually, do we have to make any motions or?
Yes, we need to put that on the record that we'll take a legal action against her if you don't mind.
Do I have a motion to allow council to proceed with that suit?
But, go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
So moved.
Tim with the movement, George with the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Mm-hmm. Any other new business?
I don't.
Nope. Do I have a motion we adjourn?
Make a motion.
Kendall with a motion to adjourn, and I have a second.
Second.